Boosting AI with Python is a talk. Quick talk about myself. I feel like I remember last time.
You're lowering the lights.
Yeah.
There's a dimmer.
This one here? Yeah, that was good. Yeah, so this is me. My name is David Wolgemuth. I've been coming to these meetups for about 2 years in Frederick. That's about when I moved here to Frederick from Chicago, where I met my fiance Sophie. We're getting married in a few months. So.
Nice.
Had to include a photo of my dog because apparently Ricky didn't know I had a dog, and so I don't know how I made it that long without talking about my dog, because that's all I talk about. A little bit about my background. I've been doing Python for about let's say 8-9 years, and in that time, mostly we'll say backend web, CRUD apps, Django. Ruby on Rails, JavaScript, so all sorts of web technology. I, for a long time, have been interested in AI and machine learning, and have done the 10-hour boot camp, become a machine learning whatever, but usually that fizzles out about 4 hours in. So, so I actually. To me, I find the new wave of AI to be very exciting because it works well for the kind of programming that I do, and without being like a machine learning data scientist with a big brain. This particular thing, that I'm going to be showing you in the example project that I have today. Is I try to take what we're doing at my work and boil it down into a single file Python script. So it's going to be overly simplified for those of you. I know we've already had conversations about RAG apps and stuff, and I know, so some of you are coming with a lot of understanding, and you'll have to bear with some of the examples, but So anyways, at my work, we are using AI, specifically GPT and RAG apps for ingesting PDF data, and also using a ChatGPT style interface with being able to ask your database of PDFs questions. Feel free to interrupt me halfway through this, but also at the end, I'll have plenty of time for questions, and also if you want to ask questions at JoJo's, I will be there. So the quick overview of what we're going to be talking about is what is RAG, and I've tried to sort of use that as the outline of the conversation going from RA to G, which is sort of silly, but so for doing this, using some traditional Python tooling that a lot of people know and love, we'll get into a little bit of prompt generation, prompt engineering, talk a little bit about using Jinja for this, and then also talking about OpenAI. And originally I had been using GPT for all and some other stuff, but then I was like, that's too much for one talk. I need to figure out what I'm doing, so I cut a lot of stuff out. So the project idea that we're going for is to create a SparkNotes website where you can explore a database of books, and all of those books will be summarized, and all key information will be pulled through them by chapter, and then the final product would be on the right. We have this chapter 5 from Alice in Wonderland, where it lists the characters, all the events that happened in that chapter, and the locations mentioned in the chapter. Where that book came from was from Gutenberg. So if you're not familiar, this is a great source for public domain. So I started by just collecting a few HTML files of books. And yeah, let's jump to the repository. I hope that everybody is on the Discord. I'm going to be slacking a couple things on the Python. If you're not on here yet, the techfrederick.org, and then down at the bottom you'll find the Discord link and you can get on there. So that's the repository that we'll be looking through.
Is that public?
It should be public. Yeah. Yes, it's public. It's like, I hope so. Yeah. So start off, clone the repository. Got a requirements.txt. You will need an OpenAI key. I'm considering for this just slacking out one that I have, or sorry, not slacking, discording one out, and then I'll just kill it after the talk.
So there's a, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's a sub-process in Git, which Discord actually might do. It's a secret clear, and it specifically looks for keys. So like as soon as you send it, like I know specifically on GitHub, if you accidentally commit a OpenAI key, it will automatically close the OpenAI key.
I didn't know that. That's a good feature. I'll try it, but otherwise you can also get your own. The only reason I wanted to Slack it out, or I keep saying Slack, Discord it out, is because you do have to have a credit card and stuff to get one, so save you the trouble.
What is the Wi-Fi?
The Wi-Fi, that's a good question. For co-working? What is
Co-work guest.
Or guess, and the password's up there, we'll
Number
not,
4,
we'll not read it out.
Oh.
lowercase creation.
Sure. So yeah, the final product is going to look like a command line interface where you can pass in an input and an output, and you can optionally pass in the chapter number that you want it to run. And recommend using Venv, installing the deps and all that kind of stuff. Cool, so RAG. This is going to be the sort of outline of how I'm going to walk through the repository. Stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. I think I got it right. So hot right now. A lot of people are really interested in this, right? It's like the big thing because, yeah, we'll get into it why. So retrieving, in this case, we're going to be retrieving some unstructured text. You can think of this as the content you already have. I already have this public domain HTML file, from a database, from a file system. The work example I showed you before, we have like a vector database that we're pulling from. And yeah, in our case, it's going to be this HTML file. Augment, we're augmenting our prompt, right? So we'll get into this deeper, but we're injecting content into the prompt. And then finally generate some structured data, and you'll see that that's like the final product is the structured data that we can use on our site. Before we go in, just talk about some real life examples. I showed you my work one. Basically, anytime you see like AI overview, they're doing the same thing to some extent. Perplexity is a great app if you haven't used that yet. They're like one of the ones who like first did this in a big way that got everybody excited. Amazon like generated from customer reviews. Yeah.
So that would always be considered RAG for the most part.
For the sake of my talk, yes.
Okay.
I don't know. I think the next thing here is, this shoehorn. Aside, RAG systems are very complex and have all sorts of dedicated tooling and stuff. I'm trying to kind of like shoehorn it all into this talk to make it like easily digestible and something that I can actually talk on. So, yeah. For this, the retrieval part, I'm using some good old Python built-ins. using argparse. I was going to use click, decided to keep it even more simple. Something I found out recently is you can pass in the file type, and then you don't even have to like do any kind of special stuff for opening the file. Just read and write.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, so read and write, it's already there for you to do. Argparse is a great way to get a CLI off the ground, yeah, and I think I already showed at the bottom that's what it'll look like. So if we jump back over to the code base, go into main.py, down at the bottom, that's this right here. Since this is a Python talk, who wants to share why we do this if name equals main?
Reserved words?
Is you could run it like, you run it without any arguments or well, yeah, it'll just execute that by default, just if you run the script.
I think you got it. It's not quite what you're not using like the specific word that I'm looking for.
If you import it, it doesn't.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah, so if you import this file into another file, it won't automatically run a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
So this, I don't exactly know why name equals main, but I do know that this will prevent that from happening. So you can import it into another file without doing this stuff, and you can, and so how I structure this, I don't know if this is going to show, but like all of my functions are defined up at the top, and then at the very bottom, if name equals main, and that's where I put my command line interface code. So.
Yeah, so when the interpreter starts, if this is the module that you're using, it is setting that special name dunder main to that special variable. So there's two things like working in tandem there that gives you this opportunity to treat it as like the executable, what's going to execute when you run this module. Otherwise, it's just creating classes and functions and whatever else you've written in there.
And this is an executable file, so you can run this like you can run this directly without specifying the Python command in your terminal. So that's just a little Python because we're at the Python talk. So yeah, then the retrieval part, continuing on the retrieval, using Beautiful Soup for HTML parsing. So Beautiful Soup is super old. I'm sure that many of you have used it before, but it's kind of like the go-to if you have an HTML file that you want to pull stuff out. All sorts of tools are built on top of this, use it behind the scenes. How we are going to be using it is pretty straightforward. We are just looking for all of the divs that have the class chapter. So if I jump back over to here, so I've got that file, and let me open that file real quick. Okay, so here's what the HTML file looks like that we're using as our base. So if I inspect this and I look for, you can see it right here at the very top level that all of the chapters are nicely organized with this class equals chapter. So and the nice thing about what we're doing here is I don't have to go any deeper than that. Like if you've worked with scrapers before, which they can get really annoying if you try and pull different things out. With this, I'm taking the whole chapter as is. Okay, so augmentation. So here is the prompt engineering part. I think a lot of people have already heard the conversation, heard the idea of prompt engineering, right? You have to write out a perfect thing to send over to ChatGPT to get the answer that you want. And that's what we're going to be doing. The basic concepts for how to do this here, trying to limit the scope to what we ask it. Don't ask it like 1,000 things and try and get 1,000 responses at once. Like write a single question that has, an answer. Specify the expected output. Keep it simple and organized. The biggest thing is include examples. So when you are asking ChatGPT a question and you need to get a really clean response, you need like probably 5 to 10 examples that really demonstrate what you're looking for. They have different kind of expectations of like don't use the same exact like formatting for all of them if it could possibly be different. Like really just wide variety, but if you do too many, then you're going to kind of overload it and it gets lost in the shuffle. So I see you are trying to raise your hand. So while I look at the prompt, do you want to ask a question?
Have you heard of LangChain community?
Yeah, so we actually use LangChain in that project I showed you earlier.
The prompt, so they have prompts that you can use in the community that have been tested, and for RAG augmentation, depending on your task, you can set up the embeddings themselves based on the prompt. So basically when you go to evaluate it, you have a generic question where you trunk the data, right? And then you ask ChatGPT, what questions would this answer? And then it would give you 5 or 6 answers that you would then use as part of the retrieval augmentation index.
I think I'm kind of following. I'd love to see what that looks like, but yeah. So I'm just going to go through the prompt that I'm using here for this chapter summary, and I like to do mine in Markdown. I like to use Jinja. The reason for this is because it's super simple. I can just hand a link to this to my project manager and say, hey, does this sound like health tech systems? Yes, no, like they can read it and they can update the question and yes, just simple Markdown. So prompt, you are an AI tasked with generating metadata about a chapter of a book. Extract the title, summary, events, reading difficulty, chapters present. Don't make up any data. Make sure you output the expected JSON format. Output, and then here you can see I specify a nice, like, this is what I need. And then again, examples, examples, examples. Most important part. So I have some truncated examples from the different books that I am using. And then we'll get into it, but let's just jump ahead. Y'all know this is Jinja. I'm plopping these examples in here. More examples. So yeah, that's the prompt. That's what it looks like that I'm passing up. Yeah, there we go. Just jumped right into it. Jinja templates. So I'm using them in a pretty limited scope here, but if you use Jinja on a daily basis or something like it, your gears are probably already turning about like, oh yeah, you could like build out these examples programmatically, and you could build out the questions programmatically. And it's like, yes, you can. So yeah, so I'm just grabbing the template, dumping these examples that I have defined in code, and yeah, so let's just jump back over to the code base and just kind of show you where in that code that is. So yeah, here's my examples. At my work, we like to use some other tooling as well, like Pydantic, because that'll generate the JSON schema, and also will make sure that all of your examples follow the same schema. That just again reinforcing like the AI, like this is exactly what you want. And then I'm tacking those into the template.
If you do that, do you find that the AI will still hallucinate and like mess up? Because that seems like an area where it's generating. Is it generating JSON output or something?
It is, yeah.
And is it consistent? Is it reliable enough to accept that it's not going to have a parse failure? Or
so you'll see right here that I have a little 3-time retry.
Okay. Answers that question.
Yeah.
Okay,
however, the last time I ran through all of this for the 4 books, and this was using 3.5 turbo, which is like the cheaper one right now, and I maybe saw a couple retries. Otherwise, it's all of the different models have different formats that they like. So some of them like XML, some of them like JSON. It's really what the model is most trained on. The newest models, like the 4.50, I don't know why it keeps jumping me down there. They allow you to do this right here, which is you can say, I demand a JSON object back.
Nice.
And so they will guarantee you a JSON response.
Behind the scenes, maybe they're just doing the retry.
Probably, yeah. I have no idea how they make it happen, yeah.
The models have.
Yeah, cool.
It's for OpenAI, it's called tools. The agent used something called a tool call, and one of the first tools that the AI companies agreed upon was outputting in JSON. And so you have outputting JSON, you have outputting in string, but you can also customize those tools so that it can interact with APIs.
Yeah, so the last bit you just said, I assume you mean like being able to specify the functions that, like a list of functions for it to call? Or
so let's say you, the example OpenAI has in their documentations is to call an API for the weather, right? And so you would basically say, what is the weather in so-and-so? It would then specify in JSON for the API, and then input it into that API, get the results back, read the results from the API you just used, and then answer the question.
Got it. Very cool.
Was that clear? Or?
Yeah. No, it's clear. I feel like you should be up here giving a talk. No. This
I've
is.
spent months trying to get my foot into the door to do this stuff. So I'm trying to learn anything and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool.
No, that's awesome.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
I did just remember here. The particular, and actually now that I say this is the next thing. So, yeah, I keep jumping ahead. This is such a well-organized talk. We're using the 3.5 turbo. There's all sorts of models you can use. Hugging Face, I absolutely love because they have all of their models organized by type. So there's computer vision models, natural language processing. So what we are doing right now is in the category of question answering or I'm not seeing what I'm looking for here, which is just chat completion. Like it really falls under the category of chat completion, right? But yeah, they have all sorts of models. You can search for like which ones are most wanted, and most of these you can run on your personal machine without like any kind of song and dance. You just have to sometimes get like a special set of embeddings or something.
And if you want a demo of Hugging Face, we have a recording from David from a previous Python Frederick from last year, I think. It's up on. I'll make sure to link it out so everybody has access to it if they want to check it out.
And Hugging Face is just, they have so much cool stuff going on. Like no matter what part of the stack you are interested in, their DevOps stuff, they're like in their spaces, it's also cool. But yeah, so what we are doing right now, it falls under the category of chat completion. So I think a lot of very smart people in here. So this is all probably review, but whenever I'm talking to somebody who like for the first time, like I love to tell them like the AI is really dumb, right? It's not like it's not thinking and like preparing an answer or anything. Every single word that comes out of its mouth is just like, what is the probability of the next word that I should say, right? So like, if I say like, tell me a story about a princess, it's going to say, okay, well, there's a high probability that story is going to start with once. Very high probability, and the next word is upon. Time, there, was, And amazingly, the models that they have, just through that process alone, are able to provide like insightful responses that beat like what humans are able to do, which is pretty amazing. And they're able to do it really fast. So drives me crazy how awesome it is for such a simple concept. But yeah, so yeah, we're using the ChatGPT API is what I like to think of it as, but it's really chat completion. So tokens. Here's, generate somebody who's overwhelmed by counting all the tokens that they're sending over to ChatGPT. So I just threw this in here because I think it's interesting. Like your API usage is going to be measured in tokens. If you are like me, you probably are more used to the idea of API calls being the main measure, but with this world, it's really how many tokens did you pass it and how many tokens did it generate, and you get charged per token.
Where a token is what?
A token, the easy answer is a word. There's probably a better answer that somebody in the room could give.
It changes on the model.
Yeah, it's model by model.
Yeah, I just want to give people a conception of it if they've
Yes.
never heard tokens.
Sorry,
before.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so tokens, you can think of them as words, or sometimes it's letters, or whatever.
I can't see. Do you use tick token to? So you can use tick token to count the tokens before you send in the request to limit your usage.
Yeah. And while we're talking about tokens, what am I looking? Yeah, platform OpenAI.com. So I can just show you if I can log in here and within the amount of. Oh my God! Just kidding.
Close something up?
Nah. Well, maybe.
I'll just there.
Okay.
People can't see it.
You can see.
Except us.
You can see my messages to my fiance. This is all great now.
You don't mind putting your social security a little bigger on there?
Okay, let's jump back here. I just want to give you an idea of what the platform looks like, because so your billing, it's generally going to be per token, and you can specify limits on everything. And so you like each model right now, they have limits, and that's because some of these models are just so popular and like everybody wants to use them. And I can talk about this in a second, but I was able to get this to work with this model, which like if I was at work and I was like, oh, I don't really care, I don't pay the bills, I would just use this model. But since it's a personal project, I was like, well, let me see if I can get it with the one that's cheaper. Turns out you can. So like, anyways, they have these limits mainly because there's lazy people like me who are just like, oh, let's just use the better model and pay more money because we don't pay the bills.
And between I think it's because it gets kind of confusing, but there's the limit on a per call basis, which is the context window.
Yes.
And there's these limits, which is like how many tokens per minute it's going to accept through the API if you're sending a bunch of calls at once.
Yeah. So this is tokens per minute, and then requests per minute per day. And then there's also, like you just mentioned,
Because like you're using the 3.5 turbo dash 16K, which has a 16K context window on a per call basis.
So that's because there's a way to bypass the token limit to how much you can input. And as a result, you call a lot of tokens per minute. And originally that caused ChatGPT or OpenAI server to just freeze. So they started going very hard on the token usage per minute.
And they're constantly down too. So like compared to what we kind of have in our minds of like, Google needs to respond to you in under 0.4 seconds every hour of the day, right? ChatGPT, however, has like maybe 20 seconds, and 9 times out of 10 says, sorry, we're out of, So there's very much.
I love that SLA.
Do you know Gemini's token per minute? Because I know the input is much larger, it's like 1 million tokens.
Yeah, and so that token limit that's also something that's an interesting conversation, because this isn't what you were just saying, but the token limit this is something that we've been dealing with, is like you can pass up a bunch of tokens, but there's oftentimes it doesn't actually help it doesn't help your question having like a full book that you pass up, even if the model can technically handle it. But I don't think that's what you're asking.
No. So there's prompt engineering things. Have you heard of React? But I will spiral.
No worries.
Right? Because I will go down on the rabbit hole. I love this stuff. The original question was, for Gemini, there's a 1 million token input, right? For ChatGPT, there is a 8,000 character input, and the thing you were talking about was basically, even though it can take all that, it will basically recycle itself.
Yeah.
So even if you give it so much information, it's not even going to look at the rest of it, because it's going to either use a greedy type of algorithm to say, oh, I already saw the solution.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
let's say in the first paragraph, the main character dies, and then because it's the main character, it can't die. So he comes back later. You ask about the main character, and the bot is going to be like, oh, he's dead. And
Yeah. There's like a whole glossary of terms for this kind of stuff, like needle in a haystack, like lost in the middle, or I don't know. There's all these kind of things that people are trying to like understand, like how do you actually write prompts that end up working. But
are those phrases used to describe patterns of behavior that the model will do? Is that what they're trying to get at?
Yeah. So like the lost in the middle is what he was just describing, of like if there's, well, the kind of, It's basically like if there's something that you asked in the middle of your question, and it's like in the middle of a whole book that you passed up, it won't be able to, like, it's not gonna find it. Whereas like other models might be really good at picking out like, oh, like find like this one thing that I mentioned in one paragraph, and it'll be, so like all of the models behave differently, and there's, yeah. So this isn't even in the conversation, but while we're talking about it, there's a whole.
I'm sorry.
No, this is good. Everybody else is probably mad, but I'm. There's like a whole industry growing up now of like, how do you track, like how do you have observability into your prompts, and so like right now we're trying to evaluate, we have evaluated, we're trying to sign a contract with this company that basically is like a platform for like QA with AI tooling, so you can write test cases for like, okay, when we ask this thing, and it's very much like an end-to-end test framework kind of platform where you write in like, okay, these are the kind of questions and inputs and configurations that we're using. This is what we expect to come out of the system.
Like great expectation for AI?
I don't know about great expectations.
Okay, it's a data quality checking
Did you do a
tool.
talk on that? Like somebody did. Yeah, somebody definitely did a talk on that.
I remember the thumbnail that I used.
I was not here for that talk, so I couldn't tell you. But a lot of this interesting thing is that like one of the common patterns is you use AI to evaluate your AI. Because if you think about it, like let's just use a very basic example of like I want to ask the question of like, what is, like, give me like write me a fairy tale or whatever. You can't do a basic like, okay, does this output equal once upon a time there was a, like it just wouldn't make sense. So what you do is you basically say like, okay, I've got this once upon a time there was a ... Use another AI to say, hey, is that thing a fairy tale? Yes or no? And so like you do like the sort of like back and forth, like one of your AIs, like your system is like generating these things, and you use other AI to like see how valid the responses are. And so like there's a whole thing like for how do you actually do this. I think we talked about seeds. Y'all play video games, you know what seeds are. But yeah, seeds are for like if you want to make sure that it gives you the same response for the same question, you use a seed. That can be useful if you're trying to like have very precise, like every time I ask it, why is the sky blue? I always get the exact same response. Temperature, this is basically how creative you want it to be. Do you want the thing to like make up a wild story, or do you want it to be like only stick to the facts? So like, for example, with like our health tech stuff, like stick to the facts, don't make up anything. If you didn't see it in the document we gave you, like shut up. Other things like ChatGPT, oh yeah, write me a story, just be so creative. Temperature way up.
When you say like default temperature for like health tech, what would you use?
I mean, it really depends on like the model and everything. I think this particular OpenAI is between 0 and 2. I think for my example for this project, I was down like 0.2. That also, if you're really trying to stick to like a specific JSON output, lowering the temperature and all that kind of stuff can make it
So
less.
lower temperature, less creative, higher temperature. More
Yes.
creative.
Yes. And then yeah, so response formats, post-processing. So yeah, we already talked about this. Like you can ask for different formats to get back. You can also like if you there's a particular strategy of asking it to explain its thought process before having it generate JSON. So you, for example, you'd say like, before you give me this JSON output, I want you to first like write up all of the stuff that you thought through, and just the fact that it does that, again, it's not thinking, so you have to like try not to like put human things on it, but like the process of it doing that, they've observed often brings better answers. And it also tends to like make you feel better as the developer who's like, why did it do this? Oh, here's a chain of thought process, you know, like, and so sometimes you do need a little bit of regex to kind of like, okay, let's like get the JSON, let's get the chain of thought, let's get the, you know, pull the stuff out that you want.
So here's a meta question, I guess, for you then. Does it drive you insane dealing with something that's like this non-deterministic? So it's like working with a programming language is like, I'm going to change the syntax on you mid-program. It's just, it seems maddening to me, or what the hoops you have to jump through.
When I was like on Sunday afternoon coming up with this talk, and I like was really quickly trying to like make this thing work, and like for the longest time it's like, why is it not outputting? And like, it was maddening, and all of a sudden it started working. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna quick generate my 4 examples out, and I have no idea what I did differently, but yes,
Okay, right.
it is maddening sometimes. But
It's like having a crazy pair partner if you're, you know, pair programming or something that is an insane person who happens to be crazy smart.
nobody saw my OpenAI key, so I think that's all
You gotta
good.
mark that timestamp.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to show what this looks like when we actually run it, because we've been doing a lot of talking, and let's see if it actually works, you know. And that's my NV is an alias for source activate, yeah. Because env.
Oh, okay. I was like, why N?
Fingers crossed. Okay, so here's like the whole prompt, and then output blah 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 blah. Here's the actual book that I'm like passing in, and then here's the response. So it's interesting. This one did not pass. Yeah. So this introduction is like a preface. So it did not actually specify any events or the characters. Let's go down to the next one.
So that one command did it for the whole book?
Yeah, so this is, I can let it just slow down, but it's kind of hard to see what's going on. You can see it's, right now it's just chugging through the book one chapter at a time.
Oh, cool.
So, let's see.
Is it just outputting to console, or is it like saving in CSV or something somewhere?
It is, yeah. Sorry, this is probably, let me do this again and comment out some of the print statements. Okay, let's comment out the system prompt, the user prompt. Oh yeah, I was going to talk about that at some point, but we're also getting slow, so I'm not going to do that. We're just going to
combining them together as in the API call.
Yeah, you pass them both up as the API call, but OpenAI has a way of specifying, is this from the system or is this from a user?
Okay.
And that way you can kind of like
Weight them differently.
yeah, like the user is not allowed to say, actually you're allowed to swear now.
Prompt injection stuff.
Exactly. So it, I don't know how well it works, but that's
That's because there was a bunch of overeager people that tested the limits of what was allowed to be said, and they're like, well, we need a supervisory system that doesn't allow the system itself to change.
Yeah, you have another system that's supervising, that's like, you know,
It's like
ChatGPT
Cheroot,
can
you
be
know?
like, I think this is fine to say, and then you have another thing that's like, that's not fine to say. Someone do that.
Jails the process.
And someone just starts talking.
okay. So we're getting some good stuff here.
This is cool.
So yeah, so here we were getting some good stuff. Yeah.
That's cool.
And then at the very end, just because I wanted to also talk about Jinja, using it in a more traditional format of generating HTML at the end. That is I'll just open up a slide tab.
So you took the AI output straight to a Jinja template?
No, so first to JSON and then just rendering that JSON into HTML. Yeah, I'm not doing any kind of like. Normally, you would want to probably save the JSON as is, and then I'm just doing it on one. I don't know why my. There we go. Get out of here. Oh, wait a minute. I probably shouldn't do the one that's currently being generated, should I? But there you go. So then it gets poofed into some HTML. So yeah, let's jump back here. I think I have like one more main slide. Was there anything else on here? No, not on that one. Which is, we've already been hearing some about agents. Again, like if you're a programmer and you've been hearing some of this stuff, you're like, wait a minute, I could take that output and put that into that and then send that back and do. So yeah, people are doing this where like you take the structured output and you send it back, and you take that structure out and basically have a whole system of inputs, outputs, and a cycle. I want to say like a year ago, Auto GPT was the big popular one. I don't know what the big ones are these days.
Crew AI. And
Oh yeah, you had mentioned that one. I don't know about that. Devin was a big thing for a second.
So, Auto GPT is still relevant if you want to do. I think the best way to compare it is Crew AI works out of the box. You just give it instructions. You can't really fine tune a lot of stuff with parameters. Whereas Auto GPT, you can fine tune exactly what you want to a given task. Now you can finagle the Crew AI to get exactly what you want, but at that point it's just a language problem more than a coding problem.
So it's Ubuntu versus Gentoo, basically?
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, I was just going to point out, if you use ChatGPT on the regular, when ChatGPT is analyzing stuff, you can actually ask it to show you what it's doing. Oftentimes, it's running Python scripts and other stuff, and you can kind of peel behind the layers and see like, oh, I just asked you for like take this image and. Yeah, this is something I did the other day. So take this image and generate a CSS color scheme file, right? That based on the images here. And so it did this thing where it like, okay, open up the file using like what is it? Pill. Open up with pill and like loop. Yeah, there you go. It's doing it. And loop through each like thing and find all of like the hex values and then like convert it to so all of this kind of stuff is getting baked in. Devin, I remember when I don't know if that's actually caught on or not, but it's basically like an IDE code editor that also you can tell it to start doing stuff, and it'll run shell commands and it'll like generate code that like puts together a whole like software system for you. So we're still very, very early days. Like I don't think any of these are like at the point of really being autonomous, but yeah, I mean we'll get there within like a day or two,
Probably out of scope for the context of this conversation, but I personally don't know that any of the AI is trustworthy enough to give shell command access to and stuff. Yeah.
Well, it has its own machine, so like you have your own machine, your box.
Oh,
you
it's
do whatever
not
you want.
taking control of my terminal.
No, yeah.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
different.
So if it wants to RF itself,
Yeah.
it can do
Yeah.
You do whatever. Basically, just like that's why things like setting token limits and
Yeah.
whatnot are really important because it's like do whatever you want, just don't rack up my bills, right?
There's a open source project called Open PowerScript, I think, or Open PowerShell. So it incorporates, I think it's called Open PowerShell. I forget. It was one of the it was on Meetup.
I was gonna say that I don't know if what you were saying was on here, but you can find like this is a list awesome GPT agents. So like as you can see, people are trying to figure this out. This is a huge list of people trying to figure out how to like create these agents. So it's happening, but
Korea looks pretty good.
Red?
It's pretty like out of the box.
Yeah.
Do what-
I asked ChatGPT to generate a list of based on this whole talk, what are some other at-home projects you could do using your newfound knowledge? So have at it.
I see the finger pointing to summaries of middle.
Oh yeah, this is generate an image that represents the right process of. I did not notice that.
And they say the AI doesn't have feelings.
This was, you'll see throughout here, there's a hand, all of these things, this is my favorite one.
That looks good.
Yeah. With the bad spelling.
Pinocchio Groot.
Anyways, yeah. What I found is the best use of AI is generating stupid images for PowerPoint. So yeah. But yeah, we've been asking questions this whole time, so I won't have like an extended. But if anybody has other comments or things that you wanted to mention, I know a lot of you have gone really deep in this already. So, like we were talking the other day, like you could have given a much deeper talk than I could.
It's so wide. There's so many different aspects you get out of everything.
The repository has now been named PSAI. It's now the OpenAI PowerShell module.
Okay. So if you're on Windows.
Yeah. So like Windows or server, if you have anything PowerShell, it converts the PowerShell language commands for OpenAI chat. So if you wanted to do something with PowerShell, you ask it and it's geared towards PowerShell commands with its own module tools. So like if you want to add users, check users, or do security checks.
At PyCon, one of the guys, the keynote is like Simon Wilson, he has what you call LLM, which is similar to that but for Linux. And you can just do like natural language, so you list all the files, sort by date, it'll spit out like a command to run it. It won't automatically run it, but you can send it okay and then run it. It's pretty cool. You can pipe information to it, kind of like use it in a Unix type way.
You say it's called LLN or LLM?
It's LLM, so it'd be like
Okay.
LLM dataset
Yeah.
IO.
You were showing me this the other day. Is it this one?
Yeah,
Yeah, this is pretty cool.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
Simon's an interesting guy to follow. Simon is
Oh,
an
yeah,
interesting
he's
guy to
really-
follow.
he's
He's
right,
like
he's very
staying on the
good.
cutting edge
Yeah.
of stuff.
There was a
He's in Django. He's did a lot of Django.
Yeah, he did.
And you had done something that you wasn't using OpenAI, but you could host your basically open source models on AWS and
so-
integrate that into this CLI too, right?
Yeah, so like I was talking about Bedrock, so you could
That's
That's
you could have like Claude 3 Opus, which is basically the same class as like ChatGPT 4. So you could have, if you have an Amazon account, you can get.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you can do that at your company, but there's nothing stopping you. If you have a good budget, you could use pretty powerful AI models, and they're more private than I think that.
Because Bedrock it's like basically the idea of, if I have it right, is like lets you switch between models. Is that an accurate thing? Like a,
kind of
Yeah,
like
it's
host
one
your
hosted,
own.
like a private hosted. They have like an API, and they say they're gonna keep it private.
Mm.
So you could, they have most of the popular models like, Mistral, Llama 2, Llama 3 have their own, but their own models are not the best. But yeah, it's like pretty easy. And it integrates with that stuff. And then the other one, a really cool project is called continue.dev, which is like, it's basically like a open source, it's like an open source like Copilot. So you could swap in if you want totally private. Like you could do everything like a Copilot privately, or you can use other models. So it's like something else becomes better for a certain thing. You just swap it in. It's pretty cool. I use it all the time. Like it's all open source also, or Apache license.
Yeah.
That's something that if you do VS Code, to check out. I don't know. I highly recommend it.
Microsoft tried to make a OpenAI based operating system where the command line was just natural language, and well, it has since failed.
Because it's a terrible idea. The only people who want to use the command line are people who like
control.
Yeah, control.
Control on my hands. All right. Well, thank you, David. Appreciate the talk. I'm gonna hit the stop button and record here.